Welcome back to Cue Garage. This week, back down the shed, and we're starting to build the big block, or we're continuing on to build the big block for the HQ sedan. So I've been doing a bit of work in the background. I've got the rear main seal back in, crankshaft's tensioned up. Now I'm going to show you what we're up to today with the pistons. So I've been doing a bit of preparation work. I'll spin you around and show you. So these wonderful things are called spiral locks, and what they do is they go in to hold the gudgeon pin and stop it coming out. So what I've done is I've got all the pistons there ready to go. I've done most of them now. So if you have a look in there, you can see in the groove, that's actually what is the spiral lock. So what you do obviously is you do one side first, get it all set up ready to go. Bit of lubrication, gudgeon pin in, set it up to the right orientation, and then you've got to work your spiral lock in. So in actual fact, it's probably easier getting the spiral lock in once the other side's done and the gudgeon pin's in or piston pin's in, because you've got something to rest against. It doesn't want to go anywhere. When you do it, the side of the piston which hasn't got the gudgeon pin in, it's just kind of free. It's harder to square it up because it wants to go through the groove into the inside of the piston, so it's a little bit harder to do. So the guy who's invented these, I'd probably like to find him and I'll just punch him fair in the face, and then I'm sure he'd know why. Anyone who likes doing these, you're a sick individual. So this is how they come. They're all compressed up like that, and the idea is to pull them apart so they look a little bit like a spring and don't go too far. So what needs to happen, we need to spiral that in and push it in. So see how the top part here, that's the widest part. You're better off trying to get your end or your starting point down the bottom here, which is the shallowest, and then you can work your way around. So I'll try and set you up so you can see, and we'll have a look at one of these, and I'll try not to swear. Righto. I'll try and put it on the side and we'll see what happens. Might be better off coming from the other way actually. How's that? See if you can see that. So this one I've already pulled apart, as you can see. So you get them out of the pack. Just got to find your ends. Put my old man glasses on because that's the best way to do it. Righto. You get your ends, get your finger down in between them, and of course they're not totally opposite each other. Give them a bit of a pull like that. Takes a fair bit, and something like that is what you're going to work with. Maybe a little bit more, but that's all right. This is my tool of choice. I like to just use a flat blade screwdriver. I've got a couple of O-ring picks in that there just in case. So like I said, get your end there, roll it in. Now what you want to do is you need to get it down into the groove, because if it's in the groove, it's how could I describe it? So it's not as proud. It's going to be sitting in there because all that metal has to go somewhere. So if you get it down into the groove, and then it's going to give you room to bring the rest of the spiral in, because otherwise it's going to be too big for the recess. So see how that might be a little bit too much that I've got there, but it's just so I can show you what's going on. Slowly push it in. So I'm hoping you can see that clearly. So it's in the groove. So if you have a look, so if you see the thickness of the spiral lock, you can see on the end it's got that little cutaway, that little notch. And if you have a look at the end here, you can see that that's in the groove there. So if that's sticking proud, it's got the, well, it's more likely it's going to peel out and you're going to have dramas down the track. Anyway, that's all the fun of a spiral lock. Now that all our locks are placed in there, we're going to go ahead and put the rim packs on. So we've already talked about the support rails in a different video, but because I've got a lot of new subscribers, we'll go through it again. So a support rail is used where the compression height of the piston has the need for the piston pin or gudgeon pin to be up into the oil groove or oil control ring groove area, as it is here. So you see how that pretty much gets the top little part of it there. So this rail supports those oil control rings. Now if you have a look closely, it's got a dimple there. So that dimple faces down, and we always try and aim for it to end up here where the gap is. So it stops the rail sliding around, so when there's pressure on here or tension on here when the other rings are in, the oil control rings, if that moves along, it's going to hit the edge of the piston, it's not going to go around. And we need that, otherwise if we've got that up here, we're not going to be able to fit our oil control rings in there properly with the spreader, and you'll soon know you've got an issue. So that's already on. We'll get our piston ring expansion pliers. I've had these for a million years, but it's always good to keep your rings square. You can do it by hand, but they recommend not to. You just spread it out with these pliers and place them over the ring, over the piston. Alright, so we've already got this support rail on here. So I'll try and put you in a position where you can see. We'll go ahead and put the other rings on. So just remember, this is the expander. I'm going to get my hand free so I can show you. So these ends butt up together. They don't overlap like that. They butt up together. So that's the expander, and these are actually your oil control rings. Now the second ring also has an oil scraping function, so we're going to make sure we put that the right way as well. Any second ring, most of the manufacturers will tell you, but if it's got a dot in the ring or a little dimple, that faces upwards to the top of the cylinder. So we'll just go ahead and put these on. They just go around, obviously easy. Make sure it sits in there properly. And we just need to make sure that our ends are butted up together and they don't overlap. So just making sure we've got a bit of room, making sure the support rail is sitting flat, and it is. Now I'm not going to use an expander for these, they're that thin. If there's any drama there, we'll know about it. So we'll do the right thing, we'll spin it around, put our top one on first. So what we're doing, we're aiming to get it in to that groove there, just sitting on top of the expander. Work your finger around. It's going to come out like that, that's fine. And then we're going to sit it down on top, and it's sitting down in the groove there. Right, so we're happy with that. So the second oil control ring, do the top one first so it doesn't want to go into that slot as it goes down over the top. We bring it down like that, that's sitting out. That's sliding in there, it rotates around. If it doesn't move freely, then you've got a drama with either your support rail or something else is wrong. So that's that one. So see how it sits in there like that. That's what you want. So I've already placed the second ring on there. I've got the top ring ready to go in the pliers, and these are actually gas ported top rings. So the idea is some of the combustion gas travels up those little grooves in behind the ring, into the ringland, and pushes the ring against the surface of the cylinder wall, creating a better seal and therefore more horsepower, hopefully. They seem to be pretty popular, so we're giving them a go. Put them in the Guy's 434 engine as well, as you know. So we just spread it out, only expand as much as we can. We don't need to go overboard. And then we need to try and get these pliers away, which is harder than you would think, one-handed. There we go. So that's one ring pack set. I'll do the rest. I'm not going to bore you by filming it all, and then we'll install them in the engine. So we've got the Hillbilly 1000 piston ring grinder. Yeah, so anyway, so I'll put a little bolt in there and some washers to fit the drill to it. Save you cranking it by hand like a monkey, like an organ grinder. So what I've noticed is a couple of pistons that I put the oil control rings on. I've noticed that the gap, see how there's just a little bit of an overlap there. So when you put it in, you've got your dimple in between where I've told you before, put it near the piston pin. There was still a slight overlap there, just by a couple of thousandths. And what that was doing was causing the oil control rings to bind up just ever so slightly. So what I'm going to do is you just hold her on and hit the drill and take a couple of thou off here. Now I can't do it one-handed, I'm sorry, but you get the idea. So this spins and then it falls off because you've got one hand, but that spins around and it just takes a couple of thou off there. And then we clean it up, make sure there's no sharp edges, put it on. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. So we've got an ARP tapered ring compressor, 4.290. So 4.250 is the standard big block bore. We're 40 thou over for 4.290. So we've already got number ones in the bore there, ready to go. So we're lined up with number two. Put a bit of oil in the bore, put a bit of oil in the tapered ring compressor, and oil on the bearings, and oil on the rings on the piston. So we'll get it ready and we'll put it in. As you know, we're making sure we've got our chamfered edge going the right way. Plenty of oil in there, so we're just going to make sure we get it started. Rubber mallet, don't damage anything. And it should just go in nice and easy, like that. So barely any pressure, straight through the taper, straight in. And that's the way we want it. Put your hand underneath and guide the rod down onto the journal. There you go, simple as that. So she's in there nice. We'll put the cap on. ARP lubricant on the bolts, tension them up, 45 to 50 foot-pound, and then we'll just keep going. As you can see, all pistons are in, caps are on, rod bolts are tensioned up. She's all done, and it turns over quite easily as well. So I've got a breaker bar on there, Yeah, it turns over quite easy. Yep, very good. So if you're into building engines, get yourself a tapered ring compressor. I've got a couple of different sizes there. It is size specific, so I guess, you know, it can be quite expensive. I think two of them, I think they might be at like 80 bucks each, so 2 for 160 or something. There's different brands. ARP isn't the only brand, but there's different brands. But definitely well worth it. A lot less hassle. Back working on the big block today. I'll spin you around, we'll have a look at what we're up to. So I've got the comp cams. It's a solid roller cam, that one. I've cleaned it all down. Got rid of the protective coating on it. Put a bit of oil on it, ready to insert. We got the crank turned around. That's just about the right position there it needs to be. I'll have a look at the cam card with you. So, what do we got here? So gross valve lift on the intake, 0.748, exhaust 0.714, so that's pretty good. Valve timing, so our duration, 276 on the intake, 284 on the exhaust, 110 degree lobe separation, so she should go alright, should breathe. I got my little kit there with my Welsh plugs and gallery plugs and all that type of stuff, timing tab. I've got other stuff as well, but that's just there ready to go. I've got a finishing kit, a Durabond finishing kit, which has got the Woodruff keys. It's got some more head dowels, little dowels for your front, for your timing cover, cam bolts or cam gear bolts. I've got some ARP ones I'll use anyway, but yeah, anyway, they're a good idea, those kits. Got the button, we'll have to adjust that to suit when the time comes. And I've got a Howard's time and chain set. So a double row, it's a 9 keyway, so you can advance, retard, have it neutral, whatever. Well, that's that one. So we're going to install that now. So I've just knocked that key in. I only need that one to start off with. So if we have a look at this gear, the crank gear, what we want to do is have our key at the 0 mark there, and that puts our 0 right up at the top. So we'll just go dot to dot, use the degree wheel when the time comes, and we'll just make sure we're on track. That's what we're going to do. I'll have to put you back up there so I can do this. So the best way to knock it on will be with a piece of tube that goes over this or a large socket. We've got a brass drift at the moment, as long as you try and get it on square. And that sounds like it's home at the moment. You don't have to give it the bejesus, but you just need to be firm. So have a look there. The 0 is just about straight up and down. Right, about there, that's it. Now on the back of this gear, it's got a Torrington bearing, like most of them have these days. There are other ones with a thrust washer here, and that's your keeper plate. But with this one, we're going to have to use the cam button in the gear, which actually it comes in contact with the front cover. So I'll put a bit of oil on that, and then we'll have a look and see where we are. Get our chain ready. So we're aiming to go dot to dot. That dot there lines up in between the two teeth on either side of the zero. And we're just going to try and get it close, and then I'll go up and try and put it on. Alright, just move it around if you need to. Right, somewhere like that. And you just got to try and find your, just spin your cam around the suit. That's it there. And you can move it around to get you. So that's a little bit out. Probably one tooth out, I'd say. Just turn your cam to suit. The dot lines up with a zero. I'm going to have to do a bit of manipulation to get these holes lined up. They're nearly there, but it's a bit hard to do it. And I'm going to have to try and get a bolt in or get a screwdriver and lever it around. But that's as simple as that. Just make sure you're there, and then when you degree it, you can just ensure that it's set up as per the cam card. So if you watched this channel before, or you've ever played around with engines before or cars, you know that it's only a matter of time before there's something that goes wrong or puts a spanner in the works, slows you down. So you'll see how the bottom gear is now being changed to a different gear. So what happened is when I put that one together and tightened up the cam bolts, it was so tight, well, it was just too tight. I knew there was something wrong. So when I have a look at the packet over there for the gear drive, it's got double road timing chain set minus 10th hour. So I guess that would be if it's been tunnel bored or oversized bearings, or you know what I mean, it's going to move the cam in crank position or their alignment. So it was way too tight. So what I've done is we haven't got time to muck around. So we're running out of time, as you know. So I'm going to use what I've got. So I've got this gear drive set up, and it's got a copper or brass thrust washer on the back. So I'll put a bit of lube and everything on that. I've got it knocked on so it's nice and tight on the back. It's got its own little cam button in there as well. And this is your idle gear, and then it's got a axle that protrudes larger than the other one. So they don't come with any instructions, just like anything these days. So from everything I've found, and I think how I had it set up last time, I'm trying to remember, but it goes with the idle gear or the large gear. So that'll be the driven gear, I guess you'd say. The large gear goes on this side. And where did I find it? Here we go, I've got the phone here. So I've had a look at the pictures, and if you see that, it's got the larger gear on the left hand side looking at the front of the engine. So it's on the even fire and order side. Alright, so that's how we're going to set it up. So what they tell us is to put the cam gear and the crank gear on first, and then slide the idle gear in, and then we'll have to check our clearances up against the cover. Now, seeing that I've already linished that cam button down, I don't know if the other one I've got will fit, but I guess we'll see if the time comes. If not, we're going to use that one, and hopefully it's going to be all right up against the ProFlow cover, which is basically a copy of a stamped steel OEM cover anyway. So we'll see where we go. So I've got some grade 8 bolts, a bit longer than the original ones. Hopefully they'll give me a bit more thread engagement. We need it to be as strong as we can. And I've got some ARP hardened washers. And then once we're happy with our clearances, I'll Loctite the bolts in. So for the moment, we're just going to put them in tight and see how we end up. So you always got to make sure your thrust washer is captive and retained. You don't want it dropping down. So I had to do a little bit of sanding just to make sure it was the perfect size to knock on and have it square, so it's sitting on the recess on the gear. And then we've got our button in there. That's the 0 degree button. It comes with a few different ones to change you can either advance or retard. So it doesn't matter where the cam is situated at the moment, we're going to make sure that that goes onto our dowel. Put our bolts in. Now if they're too long, so be it, but I just thought I'd go the longer thread I can, but it seems to be fine. I'll just make sure that I can tension everything up when the time comes. So that washer must be just a little bit bigger because it wants to hit. I'll soon figure it out. We can always swap it around if we have to. So that's why the ARP multi-point or 12-point bolts are better, because when you try and get a socket on here to tighten them up, I don't know how we're going to go. We'll try. Might just be able to get it. Yeah, I think we'll be all right. It's going to be tight. We'll just have to. Yeah, that cam button's a real. And I haven't got any multi-point ones. Anyway, we'll set it up and I'll sort that out. So the dot on the gear, straight up and down the line up with the crank gear. So you just got to make sure you put it the right way. So the longer part goes outwards. That is what actually hits up against the cover. Alright, well, this might be harder than you think. So I just must admit, holding my tongue right, you just got to be so careful to line them up both at the same time. Just a bit of a, it's like cracking a safe. It's all in the feel. Anyway, but that's how it sits. Idlers on this side, or the large idlers on this side. That's how it sits. It's up against the block. Obviously this axle protrudes through. If we had it the other way, it'd be all cockeyed, and then you're not going to use that and your cam button to hold against the front cover. So what I'm going to do now is get the front cover out, and we'll just try and set up and make sure we've got the clearance that we need. So I've checked the end float and we had a little bit too much. So I've measured with a straight edge and verniers, and so this idler gear, that shaft there, it's going to come out to about there, which is just about perfect. It's right in the centre of the gear set, and that hits up against the cover, so it's going to be like right there. For the actual cam button, I measured that with the same process using verniers and a straight edge to see where it was going to contact the cover. So you see what I've done is I've welded in a flat washer and just ground it flat again. So keeping in mind that there's going to be oil in here anyway, so I'm not worried about corrosion, but it's got a little needle roller bearing set up in it in the thrust in the cam button, so it spins as it contacts. So we were nearly there, but the trouble is once the gasket's on and crushed down, there was too much room to move, and I don't want that. I don't want a chance of the thrust washer inside falling down or anything like that. It needs to have pretty close to contact all the time, so that's what we're going to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'll Loctite those bolts in, tension them up, put our cover on with our gasket. I'm happy with that, and we'll just keep on trucking along with the build. nice and square. New keys in, type of harmonic balancer now. No need to use Loctite on the dampener bolt, but you would have seen I have put the seal in. It's nice and square. Just give it a bit of a hit to make sure it's square right at the end. It's recessed all the way in. Plenty of lubrication on the seal. Last thing you want to do is burn your front or rear main seal. A little bit of lubrication on the crankshaft, so you want to be able to get that off again. The new keyways in, and we've got our new scat balancer, and it's all been balanced with a rotating assembly. Now I haven't got the proper installation tool, but see, I've got that big long bolt there, so you should never smack them on with a hammer. Although I know that sometimes, you know, to get yourself out of trouble, that's what you've got to do, but use a bit of wood or something so as not to damage anything. So I use that big long bolt and a series of washers or whatever and pull it in until I can get the other bolt in. So this bolt here, that short one there, which is the dampener bolt or harmonic balancer bolt, I might swap that one out for an ARP, but at the moment that'll do for us to just get it together, and I can swap it out before it's time to go, any time really. I've already made sure that my counterweight bolts in there are nice and tight, so the last thing you want is that coming loose as well. So give it a bit of a clean up, slide it onto the keyway, make sure you're lined up. The other thing we probably need to do is put our timing tab on, because we might get to those bolts once we get it in, but I'll get it started and then we'll go from there. So I'll need this bigger washer, and if we're going to use spacers or whatever, that's just what we're going to do. You can use a socket or, you know, whatever you got. As you can see, the balancer's on, ready to put our oil pump in. So I'll just show you some of the parts and everything we've got sorted out. We've got a Mellings high volume oil pump. I always go high volume. Flow and a restriction gives you pressure, that's what we want. ARP stud, there's only one bolt holding it on, so you might as well use the best. Got our pickup, got oil filler adapter, got a billet one, nice and strong. And we've got our oil pan over there. So what we'll do, once we get the oil pump on, I'll check the clearance, we'll check the height of the pickup screen, and then we'll see how much clearance we're going to have on the bottom of the oil pan. So I'll put you up here and we'll get to work. So I'll put a bit of Loctite on the stud, and I'm just going to use ARP lubricant on the threads and on the washer. Just tighten that up nice and snug. I'm going to clean this surface up, and I'm going to put a little bit of sealant on there. Now, you don't have to, it's a machine surface, but I just like to do it. Before we put our oil pump on there. Bit of Permatex. Better than using anything like elastic or that kind of product. because you don't want pieces of that to break off once it hardens up. The only way to remove it is mechanical means, and you don't want it going in, it'll end up clogging up your pickup screen. And then we've got real dramas. So I've already checked over the oil pump. Spins freely. So the other thing we need to remember is our shaft, oil pump drive shaft. I knew I had something to do when I was over there and I forgot. Righto, I'll go and organise that. Keep going, like I didn't forget. Got our drive shaft. Sit down on there now. Slide her in. Sitting on the dowels, looks like she might need a little bit of a knockometer. Rubber mallet would be the go. Sat down on the dowels nice. So I've already put a bit of lubricant on the threads there. Just put a little bit of stuff on the nut. Alright, and we'll tension it down. Between 45 and 60 foot-pound it says in the manual, or ARP manual. We'll go for 55 foot-pound. Alright, she's nice and solid. Now if you do our pickup. So that's the hole that goes in there. It lines up with this bolt. I'm going to take that bolt out and we'll see if we can get it to line up properly. I might even have a socket here somewhere I can do that with. Should be more prepared. And look at that, it's metric. Okay, right. Right, I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on it. Once again, it's an interference fit, so you probably shouldn't have to. I'd rather be safe than sorry. And the way they've made these pickups, see it's got the little right angle tab on there. That's so you can get a brass drift or whatever in there and hit it, knock it in. Get it started. Really should have had a clean up, shouldn't I, before I started this. little bit more. So the mounting tab is just about in the middle of the bolt hole there, so it's perfectly lined up. Put that little bolt back in, and I'll put a bit of Loctite on that. I've got the oil filter adapter. It's got an O-ring in there, so I'll just smear it with a little bit of oil. And the cutout goes towards the oil return port, which if you had it the other way, there's still room for the oil to get in there, but see how it's got a chamfer on the edge? It's supposed to be for better oil control or better flow. Got our two little button screws here. A little bit of Loctite, once again. It's just another thing you don't want falling off. As you can see, got the oil pan on, engine mounts are on, fuel pump block off's on. It's actually for a small block, see how it overhangs, but you can use those bottom two bolts to run P-clamps for your wires or whatever you need. Water pump's on. Kicking it old school with the Gilman drive, so we'll see how we go with that. See if I throw a belt or not. What else? Put that oil filter on. I'll run a Z24 later on once I run it in, before we go down to Summernats. And I've just got the dial indicator set up on the cam gear, and we're just going to very carefully lever the cam forward and see what we've got. So just, it's not going back to zero there, but let's try and zero it. Okay, zero. Right, so we've got about, it's not going back to zero, but it's about 5 thou, because it goes back to just on the other side of zero, so that's good. I just want to make sure I had some kind of clearance there. Obviously the engine rotates fairly easily, so if it was bound up you'd soon know about it, but that's just another little check we have to do. So we'll just keep trucking along. I'm just going to keep bolting a few bits on. I'm going to have a look at the, see we've got to match port the heads, just to see if the intake manifold's got to be matched up to the head, and you might as well allow half a day or a day for that job. Seems like if you don't have to redo something, you're not doing it right. So I hastily put the engine mounts on. Forgot to put my Welsh plugs in, freeze plugs. So I've done them all apart from this one here, and I'll just show you how I do it. I've never done it before. So I can use some type of sealant. If the metal around here is good and it's not pitted, I'll just use Loctite. Stops them moving. They're an interference fit anyway, as you know. And brass ones won't rust. So that's what I do. I just use a bit of retaining compound. So I put it in there, get the lumpy, just give it a bit of a smack, and then just work your way around. can hear that change in the sound. That means it's hitting the block. Run your finger around. It's all smooth. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. There you go. All right, then we can put our engine mount back on. It's always fun doing things twice anyway, isn't it? ARP hardware again. It's Loctite on there. Just a bit of thread locker. What? Everything just seems to be taking a lot longer than it normally does today. I don't know why. 32 degrees. It's not too bad. There we go. What I do is I slide the, because you've got a bit of room for movement on these mounts, I slide them forward the whole way. That means it positions the engine back as far as you can. A few ugger-duggers, that's it, it's all done. I'm just going to take you over to have a look at the cylinder heads and the inlet manifold, and I'll just show you what we're looking at there. So I've already got the intake gaskets, got Harmonic head gaskets. You see they're quite large ports, and this is what we're looking at. So quite a bit of material to come out. I was nearly going to just keep going and chuck it together, but I thought I can't just do it for the sake of a few hours tomorrow. I'm just going to do it. So you can see there's a fair bit of material to come out of the heads as well. Very similar amount, and then that'll match the gaskets, match the intake, match the heads. That's what match porting's all about. So imagine that, I don't know how many CFM, just that little part there, if we take it out and match it up, should flow a fair bit better. That'll be our job for tomorrow. I need a good clean up, there's stuff everywhere. But I've got pulleys on, giving the gaskets a bit of a coat in the copper sealant. Yeah, that's about it. So we're going all right. We've just got to keep chipping away and get it done. All right, I'm going to have to cut this one short, I think. I'm going to have to leave it here. I'll split this engine build up into a couple of parts anyway. Otherwise it's just getting a bit too long. I don't want to bore the crap out of you. But I just want to say thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, share, hype it if you want to. We're going really well. I think as of today, 999 subscribers, over 3,000 watch hours. So everything's going really well, and it's all because of you guys and girls, so thanks very much, I appreciate it. But until the next time, we'll leave it there. All right, stay safe everyone. Thanks very much.